Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Writing Journey. I'm Michael.
I'm Sunny.
And I'm Matthew.
We're a dad, a mom, and a teenage son. We each recently took up fiction writing. We're definitely not experts, but we hope you'll enjoy hearing about our journey and maybe get inspired to start your own. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Family Writing Journey. Today we have a special show. We'll be talking about an update. We'll each be talking about updates on what we're currently doing. So we're each in the middle of some writing project. And the purpose of this episode is to update you guys on what we're actually doing at the moment with our books. And it'll give us a chance to talk about how we're doing, what our goals are, our struggles. And we'll try to do these updates occasionally just to keep everyone updated on the specifics of what we're working on at the time. So we will start with Sunny.
Thanks. I'm excited to go first. I'm, as you both know, but I haven't talked a lot about, I am just getting started on a cozy mystery, which is a new genre for me, something I wanted to try that would be different. And I took a while to do some background reading, and you probably noticed for a while there were books around the house about how to write a mystery, and I was taking notes, and because this is kind of how I am as a person, I figured there's stuff to learn about it. I could learn it, and so I created a bunch of Google Docs. I was gathering a lot of information, and I was getting more and more feeling like, oh no, there's so much to do. I thought it was going to be a fairly straightforward genre, but I was feeling now a little bit overwhelmed by it. So I decided I would jump in and at least get the outline going. So that's what I did maybe 2 weeks ago now.
And I would just interrupt just to say, you've always read, well, you've read a fair number of mysteries.
Yes.
But Agatha Christie style mysteries and maybe some other writers.
Yeah, I'm not really a reader of what they now call
the
a
modern
cozy.
cozy. Yeah.
I tend to read things that are a little bit more intense than the modern cozy. But
Although still not too intense.
Right, and I knew that my writing style was going to be more in line with what they now call a cozy. So, yeah, so reading all the background made me feel like, oh, this will be fun. I have a sense of what this is about. I struggled and struggled with the outline, and even though we talked about outlining a few weeks ago and I said I'm definitely a plotter, not a pantser, I really got bogged down in trying to plot it out and trying to do all the things that I'd read you should do.
Well, and I would also interrupt again just to say it must be hard to do a cozy mystery or a mystery of any sort.
Because you have to
you're plotting
like drop the clues and make sure you have the right suspect, but it's not too obvious, but it's still like you could figure it out. Yeah.
That seems really daunting.
And it's harder than you think. You read those things, like you read it in a book or on a website and it makes sense, but then to figure out how to actually do it is challenging. So my current project is book 1 of the Cranston College mysteries, and they are set on the campus of a sort of a small liberal arts kind of college, and the protagonist, who is the amateur sleuth, is an English professor. I believe she's an English professor, and so I know something about that environment. I think it's going to be a really cool setting for a lot of interesting things to happen, because lots of different people come and go, and you've got different, it's almost like a little world unto itself, which is what the cozy usually has, is kind of a small community that's fairly contained, where you can have a variety of quirky characters and a sleuth who interacts with a lot of people. So I'm excited about that, and I think it's a bit unique, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I picture, and I'm not a cozy mystery reader, but I picture sort of a little English countryside village or something where all these strange things happen. And I feel like there's been, PBS TV shows like that and probably boatloads of books like that. But I like your take on that, having it be in a small college.
And then you could have like good recurring characters and stuff, like you said, who you can build at the start, but they can be common threads throughout the series.
Yeah, and that's a big thing that I discovered about writing a series that from the start, you have to really think about, you're not going to build every character equally in the first book. And especially with cozies, which as a genre tend to be fairly short, they tend to be more like the 50,000 word kind of average in general. So you have a lot of characters, but you don't necessarily build them. You don't have to do everything all at once. So I did spend a little time making sure that I could roughly think of, at least 4 or 5 books that could sort of fit in the series before I started working on the first one. And now I'm about 3 chapters in.
So you've outlined the whole thing roughly.
I outlined the whole thing roughly, but it's really, I think that's a big struggle, was getting the outline. I still feel like, and in fact, I think I told you guys this, I was so bogged down in the outline that I actually went ahead and just wrote the first chapter without having outlined it, which felt uncomfortable, but it jump-started me to do it. And then the first chapter was sort of fun and easy to write. That was sort of the discovery of the body. And then I went back and said, okay, I want to do this, so I need to get the outline. So I have the outline. I've written the first 3 chapters, drafted the first 3 chapters. And so basically what has happened is that there has been the introduction to the very non-gruesome, non-specific crime, which is the death of an important member of the faculty. And I've introduced the sleuth and the main characters and kind of gotten the ball rolling. And I've hit another roadblock. So by the time we do our next follow-up, I might have an update for you. But right now, I'm 3 chapters in on drafting. The outline is still kind of iffy. And I'm definitely feeling like this is not as easy as I'd hoped it would be.
What about like the writing itself, though? Like when you're sitting down and writing, does it flow naturally there, or
It's
is
fun,
it just
yeah.
the times in between where you're thinking about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because yes, I think once I'm sitting and writing, it's flowing out of my fingertips
Which I think
within the chapter,
I think that just means that like you should be writing more often, because the more you write, I feel like the less time you have to get bogged down in thinking that, oh, my story's not going to work. But when you actually write, it does work.
And
So
I know when we talked about writing habits, I did say that I have never really made strict goals for myself to write really frequently. So I tend to write more sporadically. So you're right. I wrote drafted the first 3 chapters. Then I felt like I was at a roadblock. And so for the past, few days or a week, I haven't written anything.
yeah, the worst thing to do at a roadblock is to stop writing.
It does sound like the wrong thing to do.
Okay, so that's the advice from the smartest member of our club, Matthew.
I would not call myself
that.
that.
I did hear a podcast from a mystery writer who said that on occasion, as they're writing, they'll change who done it. They'll change who the murderer was, because they have a few people that are possibilities.
Right.
And just, by the nature of writing, it sort of comes out that, well, you know what, I think I'm going to switch that. And obviously you have to go back and be very careful with your editing, but you can change it another way. I know you don't necessarily want to do that.
That makes me feel
sorry, maybe
anxious when you say that.
Yeah. But
I've heard that too.
Right.
But I don't plan to do that.
Okay.
I've got enough trouble with what I've got working right now. So you want to switch? I feel like I've given a good overview of where I am.
Yeah, so I'll give an overview of where I am. I've only done one thing so far. So I did a rough draft of a fantasy book. So right now I'm in sort of the very prolonged, slow process of editing. So I wrote a book, I think it was 65,000 words for a pretty rough draft, and like a rougher draft than anyone would ever normally probably share with anyone. But I shared
it with us.
But I was willing to share it with you guys.
Yes.
Which in retrospect, I apologize. Right? Would have been nice to have a slightly cleaner copy of things. And also with my sister-in-law, Sarah, who's fantastic and helpful in giving advice as well, and very positive. So now I'm in the editing process, and what my story, I should go back a little bit. So my story takes place on another world. It's, I would say the world is similar in development to like a Roman era civilization, but there 1,000 years prior there was a different
Like a
civilization there.
post-Roman Empire. Sort
Yeah, exactly.
Not
Yeah.
during.
But it's not here on Earth.
Yeah, it's definitely not on Earth. And 1,000 years prior, there was a magic system. There was magic in the world, and that there was some sort of war, some sort of event, and it went away. And my story is about a man and then some other characters who, through a series of events, end up rediscovering the magic that was lost all those years ago.
Although you have said that you have found your story to be end up being more character focused than like that general sort of world and plot idea.
Yeah, big time. I thought it was going to be sort of a quest, and it was going to be about, this group of people and the trials and tribulations they went through and the discovery of that. But really that actually sort of the magic discovery turned out, or is turning out so far, it's still drafted, so it might change, but turned out to be sort of really peripheral. But I am hoping to do further books beyond where that comes into play a little bit more, but I don't know. I tend to like to write about the character development in my own way. I don't know if I'm saying that, if that's even true really, but anyway, it's more important to me than the magic in this first book, or at least.
Right.
Or do you think the magic in the first book needs to be more developed than it is?
Well, I don't think I'm going to do that, because it just doesn't, I would have to change everything. So no.
That is what the editing process is for.
Yeah, but that would be like really massively
Work?
changing every. That would be like way too much work. So This is book one. This is where it all starts, sort of.
So what specifically are you like? What is this round of editing doing for your book?
Yeah. So this round of editing is taking the advice of you two, who were nice enough to look at it and write some recommendations for me, some general and some specific kinds of things. And the idea being that, if I get rid of some of the glaring problems and some of the, you guys pointed out a lot of things, obviously sort of the normal grammar, punctuation and whatnot, you guys sort of alluded to, and sentence structure and things, but really I'm trying to maybe do a little bit of that, but essentially try to fix inconsistencies, things that don't seem to make sense or aren't explained well enough. So my 65,000 book or word book is now up to 69,000, just by sort of adding some depth. And for me, what I'm horrible at is developing. Well, I'm kind of rough at a lot of things.
Developing in general,
but being descriptive, so my dialogue is sort of just, two people talking in a white room, essentially, so I'm really trying to, here and there, it's a work in progress, but I'm trying to make sure that I add in facial expressions and descriptions of the surroundings and things along those lines. There's many other issues, but I think that'll be one of the things that really improves my writing the most. There's so many things, but doing that, I think, is really good, because then I have a picture of things in my mind, but all I write down is the words that people are saying. So, getting some description of what people are wearing and how they're moving and what their expressions are is, helpful.
So I know that you're on your second round of editing. So Matthew and I have read the book twice.
Yes.
Through, and we've given you different kinds of feedback. And I know one of my questions to you has kind of been, what kind of feedback do you find most helpful? Because you, unlike Matthew and I, are really focusing a lot of energy on editing. So I'm curious how that's gone and what you have found helpful or not helpful.
Well, at the moment, you get a little defensive, right? So maybe it's all helpful, though, is what I want to say. So yes, when you guys are giving me feedback, I hope I take it pretty well, but you can't help but feel a little defensive in some respects. What I said before, making sure that things make sense, that's pretty important, right? That's I guess the most helpful, but I don't mind all the other stuff. I need to know everything about it that I'm sort of screwing up. So,
and every little bit of editing that you do helps improve the book by whatever small increment. So
that was my thought. Now, in the end, it doesn't change like the structure and outline of and story of my book, which might need work, but I don't really care. I just want to get this to some sort of semblance of decency. So every time I spend any time editing, it's helpful. So my plan is to get this round of editing done, and then I'm not going to ask you guys, but then ask like Sarah and maybe somebody else to look at it again and give me more feedback so I can at some point do another.
Do you find that when you've gotten a certain kind of feedback, let's say, for example, that Matthew or I have suggested that you need to not only have the dialogue, but you need to tell the reader what else is happening while the conversation is happening? What are people doing? What's happening in the surroundings? Do you feel like, are you finding that as you move through the editing that you get better at applying things that you've learned? Or
Yeah, the question will be the next time I write from scratch, will I then do it? Because now it's easy because I'm looking for it and I'm fixing something that's already there. So I can see it all the time. I see, oh, all of my dialogue could use more stuff around it, more descriptive information. I'm very curious to, honestly, unfortunately, I have the sinking feeling that when I write my next bit of writing, whatever it is, that I'll only have taken some of these lessons. So, but hopefully I'll take more.
Yeah, I think you'll certainly retain some of it.
And I'll just say a slight aside, but I think Matthew probably would agree with me and you too, because we've all done some editing and critical reading of each other's work. And that's a skill too. Not only are we all novice writers, but we're certainly super, super novice reviewers. And so, do you feel, I feel like
I don't know what feedback to give a lot of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also do feel like when I see things in Dad's work or yours, then sometimes it makes me like I do notice something and then I think, oh, I could do that in mine too. So being a reviewer, even though it can be a little bit time consuming, I think it does help. It helps with your writing.
Yeah. All right. And Matthew, what are you working on right now?
Well, I am sort of in the opposite camp of you, Dad. Like you have sort of focused on one book and done a lot of editing. I recently finished the first book that I wrote, which is also sort of two books, but we don't really need to get into that. But I just wanted to jump right into a new book, just a totally different idea. It is still a similar genre, or basically the same genre, which is a secondary world fantasy. And it's sort of I guess high fantasy is the term for it.
Secondary world means not Earth.
Means not Earth, okay. Yes. And I don't really have like I don't have like a go-to synopsis for what the plot is, but I would say basically it's like a sort of a desert-based rebellion fantasy, I guess. And it's got sort of three distinct parts, which I will see as it turns out how long they end up and if it's 3 books or 3 parts of 1 book or whatever that is. But so I've started this book, and just like you, Mom, I am 3 chapters into it. Earlier today, I finished the 3rd chapter up.
And you outlined an entire, or the 3 sections, or?
I did a general outline for the full thing, but then I did a chapter outline for the first part. And I think that was good. I didn't want to get too bogged down before I started.
Can I go back? I missed what you said at first. This new book is not related to the other 2 that you wrote previously. So this is
not at all related.
A whole fresh start.
I wanted to have a new beginning.
Was your previous series complete and done, or did you just decide you wanted to move on and do something different?
Both. I think I finished the story that I wanted to tell with the previous thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could think of a sequel if I wanted to, but I also just wanted to move on to something different.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just try out new things and have more fun.
And you weren't invested in editing more on the first 2?
Certainly not. I mean, I did a little bit of editing, but for me, I don't find the editing fun, or at least not particularly fun. And I'm only writing for fun, at least at the moment. So it makes sense for me to move on.
It is interesting how different Dad's approach has been from yours. And mine too, really. Neither you nor I have done a whole lot of editing. We've just kind of moved to the next project, had fun, moved along. So I think maybe we need a future episode on sort of the psychology of writers and what makes one person really want to delve into repeated editing and really improve the book, and other people are quite happy to just move on to the next
I
thing.
think you go ahead.
I will say two things.
Do you want to analyze your dad?
Well, one is I started from a lower level. So, a couple of rounds of editing is getting me, closer to what Matthew wrote on his first go, probably. And the other is I just can't help myself. I feel like it's not probably the right thing to do. And I probably should move on, but I just want to get this darn book better. So anyway.
For me, I think that like the reason I want to move on to new projects and stuff is not that I am not invested in the previous thing. It's just that I'm a person that has a lot of ideas about everything, but also about like novel ideas and characters and world aspects, which I can't fit them all into one single book. So I have to move on to write new books to explore these cool ideas that I'm excited about. And I'm certainly still in that stage of this book that I'm writing now. Like I'm very excited about the ideas still. So I think about like the future of where this book is going, and it really excites me. And I certainly had that at the beginning of the last book that I wrote, and it faded slightly throughout, like a gradual downhill. But I think it just got to the point where I had to move on to something new, and then I'll be a new crest, and then it'll fall again until I'm done with that and I move on to the next thing.
So you're excited now, but are you having any struggles right now?
Not yet. I haven't written very much, and like I said, the beginning part is definitely the easiest for me because I'm still like super excited about my ideas, which I think are really cool. Although I guess I have had one struggle, which is that I've been at work, which is a novelty for me. And I'm doing field work out in a vineyard, so I'm out in the hot sun all day. And when I come back, I'm often tired, which can be hard. It can be hard to motivate yourself to write. But once I do sit down and do it, I have a lot of fun with it, and I get good quality out, I think.
Are you writing on a schedule right now?
Not yet. I think, like I said, I'm still too early on, and school's about to start for me for my senior year, and I think once that happens, I will sort of probably settle into a writing routine that fits around school.
Mm-hmm. So you haven't really had much feedback, if any, from Dad and I about the plot or what's going on with your new book. And I was thinking as I was listening that that's kind of interesting. Our writing club, we help each other a lot with editing and review and just sort of general conversation. But did you feel like you needed some way to bounce ideas off someone, or did you feel pretty solid about what you're coming up with in your own mind?
I think partially it's the thing, like, I don't want to spoil my story for you guys who are going to be some of or the first people who read it. And I spend a lot of time thinking about my ideas, and I don't know if the way they fit together is exactly perfect, but I just want to write it and see. And I do have a friend who is my age, and he's not really into writing, but he's certainly into world building, which is like the setting for fantasy and coming up with cool stuff for that. So I do bounce some of my ideas off of him because he has ideas about the world building aspect.
Yeah, I don't talk to anybody else except you guys and, podcast world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I have shared it before that I feel like coming up with the creative good idea is not my strength. So I'm always kind of envious, Matthew. Like when you told us you had a new project started, it just seemed like you had that creative spark and you were running with it.
Yeah, and it was sort of a problem actually. Like at the tail end of my last book, I was already starting to like spontaneously come up with new ideas, which I had to block so I didn't lose too much interest in what I was doing.
Yeah, well, good. All right. Well, that's a good update on what each of us are doing. We'll try to do these episodes every now and then just to, give an up-to-date.
Probably not on a set schedule, more like when we have sort of progress or something new that we're working on or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds
sounds
good.
good.
All right. Thanks for joining us today, and good luck with your own writing journey.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.